Good evening, people. Just going out to do the nightly lockup and replace the video that I accidentally deleted. Oh, got people with lots of music around. That's unusual for a Thursday night. Better not be too loud in a few minutes when I head off to bed. Anyway, what have I done? Well, I have made a wee bit of a boo-boo in my cutting of these panels, in my enthusiasm for the new. Hang on, I've got one of these. Sorry about that. But that was a what we call a white-tailed spider. They tell us it's not dangerous, but we know through anecdotal reporting that it can cause issues. Anyway, yes, I was quite enthused with my little gauge tool here, and I was thinking, if I have to have the tool, which this one is set up for 500 millimeters exactly, then if I want to make a rebate or a reduced panel, I'd have to have two of these, each with the correct measurement on it. That was the thinking. As soon as the thought entered my head, I proceeded as if that's what this panel should be cut to, or in theory, and cut it. But then I realised afterwards, of course, no, it was just an idea I was running through my head, and actioning it was the wrong thing to do. Anyway, what the story was I was thinking that these two pale coloured boards, they make up a composite base for the whole mitre station, and this panel here was to be the back of the mitre station, and of course it would therefore kind of like nest into the base like this panel, representing the back, and that would have been fine, and it turned out really, really good, and I was again very happy with my gauge tool until I realised that I'd made a mistake and actioned an idea that should never have been actioned. So that's what happened there. Then I made some bold claims in these videos that I've boo-booed and deleted, saying which method I'm going to employ to correct it. Gave the logic, said this is what I'll be doing, and then I sat down again, probably for the second or third time, in front of the computer and used SketchUp, and I thought, well, no, I'm not going to do any of those ideas. If I'm going to clash the front of the panels anyway, why don't I push the panel that I cut by accident flush with the other panel and just put a thicker clashing strip, because after all of the panels are getting a 10mm clashing strip. I'll just make this one a little bit thicker. Make it 38mm instead of 10mm, so it makes up the 28mm, not 38. 28mm rather than the 10mm. So yeah, anyway, fixes it. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Jeez, read between my words. Anyway, that's what's happening there, and I'm still happy with this. I'm going to make I'm going to make a couple of variations on the tips, the ends, because I can see that this, while would work, I'm going to say 3 out of 4 instances, it's that last instance that I may require, and that is where we need to come. Just pretend that we've got the corners of a box and the other side along here. If we want to get right into the corner, we need to be able to have a what would you call it? Well, an end, a tip that has a very sharp point on it to allow us to get into that corner, and of course probably the diagonal on the other end, other diagonal, sorry, and ditto on that. This won't do it because, well, after all, this is a 1 meter long rod and won't do it. However, I've got a little bit of a design or an idea. It's a trammel or tremel, whatever they are called, and it's where it utilises two rods. They mate into each other's threads, so you can jump them along and extend out to the desired length. You have to have a couple of different lengths to be able to accommodate the different situations, but it's one of those things that if you've got them, you're going to make use of them, and yeah, I like it a lot. I used a 6mm rod on this one. I would prefer heavier, but I used a 6mm rod because one full revolution of in this case a dowel, a threaded dowel, one 360-degree revolution is 1mm. Of course, half a revolution, or only 180 degrees, is 0.5 millimeter. So that makes this sort of thing really, really usable. And it'll be even better when we can extend measurements out the end accurately. So anyway, a heavier one would be ideal, but that's what we've got. If you can get a heavier rod, well, put it this way, if I've doubled up with this, or tripled up with it possibly, excuse me, but I've talked about the 16mm rod that's in the Frankensaw over there, and that has, of course, a M16 has a 2mm pitch. So you need I think you need a rod that has those increments, and a simple increment, 1 and 2mm is fine. You can get threaded rod of a bigger diameter with a 1mm pitch on it as well, but it's getting them is the problem, and then having easily accessible bits and pieces that you can get from the from the merchants, the local hardware store, that then thread onto it. So there's that little. It's possible, but not easily possible. Yeah, figure that one out. So I could make up a 16mm equivalent of this, but it doesn't have the fidelity that I can get from this. Anyway, nonetheless, I had a couple of purchases arrive on my doorstep today. The courier came along and gave them to me, and it's the switchable magnets. They're a slightly bigger version from the one that I've lost, and I've got two of them. And this was the idea behind this, was that at some stage in the not too distant future, I may wish to make, I'll just turn them back on, I may wish to make a guide or a stop that sits on the saw over there, and or will help to support the rip fence in position when I'm ripping heavier timber, which can cause some deviation to the rip fence, which can be quite long. In fact, it's not that one there. It's the same sort of one, but it's actually that one that's standing up there. So you can see that it is actually quite a long rip fence, and this is the support piece, outfeed panel that takes a longer, effectively makes your workbench longer. And you see it now, it's been commercialised. So isn't it interesting that we have these sorts of things, and then I hadn't seen it, but I'd been working with this for a couple of years like this, and now commercialised. Thing is, most things aren't new. They've just been presented in a better fashion, and it's not like cobbled together in the workshop. That one works fine. But one of the limiting factors is the longer you go, of course, there's more leverage on it. And what I'm doing is, in fact, I'll just show you. I'll just bring one of them over to the mini saw, the small saw here. Imagine that this was the long rip fence. Well, this rip fence, believe it or not, is actually quite solid, surprisingly so. But you can pop your magnet on there, just rub it up against the aluminium, turn it on, and sucks itself down magnetically onto the table, and now the rip fence is being supported by the magnetic stop that this can give us. It's also, and one of the main reasons I got it, able to put in a position feather boards or a guard or some such on the other side of the saw blade, feeding it in this way, timber in this way. So that's a good facility that isn't available on some saws. This one and my Franken saw don't have any grooves for like miter gauges or anything like that in the saws. So I was going to make something up utilizing the magnets like that. So now they would suck down magnetically onto the saw base, and I've got whatever I've got on this side to do whatever I want to do. There's been many times when I've been wanting to do that sort of thing on that saw, and because it doesn't have that facility, impossible. So anyway, that's what we're about. I've got a couple of got a couple of little jobs tomorrow to do. Then I'll be back into the workshop to finish cutting down these panels. That was a job for today, but I've got a lot of work done outside. It's a lovely day today, and the place is looking tidy. So now I don't feel guilty about coming in and spending time in the workshop, cutting those down to size, making use of my gauge rods. Very happy with those. They're going to be very, very handy. Okay, that's it. Hopefully I've covered off the material, the items that I was talking about in the boo-booed deletion of the other videos, but there you go. I did make some comment about this. I think I've covered that off in another video about the method for holding down and for jacking it up and down for lifting, and the ability to tune the saw. So the base itself, which I think is a good facility, something that you should never really have to do until you need to do it, and then that will have that sort of tune ability. So yay. I will talk more on that as I do a little bit more on it. Righty-ho, that's it. Pretty much covered it off. Late at night, going inside. Definitely the last video for the day. Okay, see you now. Bye.